An area that I'm really passionate about, and obviously want to help as many women as Ollie does as well. So I think you all know Ollie, but if you don't, I'm just going to introduce you to Ollie quickly. He's a certified functional medicine practitioner and a nutritional specialising in hormone and gut health as well. And he did tell me this morning that he had a proper name for it, but there was no way, Ollie, I was going to...
I know.
So maybe you can explain a little bit.
No, there's an institute called the Karazian Institute. So it's a Harvard lecturer and doctor from Harvard, and there's only 9 people in the UK that are certified practitioners, and I'm one of them.
You are one of them.
So I can't remember if it was 9 and I'm the 10th, or it was 8 and I'm the 9th. But
so we've got the best here today, guys. So what? Obviously, we're going to roughly be about an hour. So we've got some questions. I've got some questions here that I'm going to ask Ollie. And then if maybe towards, say, 10 minutes towards the end, open up to anyone. So if you've got any questions from, obviously, the floor, we'd love to answer them as well.
I think if people have questions when we're going through, rather than trying to remember them.
Absolutely, that's a good idea.
I know I always forget questions and waiting right till the end.
Cool.
I've not got them anymore.
Good. So if we'll start. So the first question I've got here is, how does hormone imbalance affect women's health, especially during the perimenopause or perimenopause and the menopause? So
I think a big thing I've seen in clinic and with clients is probably brain function being the big side of things, like hormones going up and down. 1 minute your brain's working, 1 minute your brain isn't working. But even things like sleep, being able to lose weight, just being more agitated all the time. These are big things that I see with patients all the time. And that's both in men and women with hormone side of things, that as we get older and the body isn't functioning as much as it needs to, we start to see what stress has done to us up to this point. Our adrenal glands should produce around 10 to 30% of sex hormones, in addition to ovaries and then testes for guys. And as these start giving up, the adrenals become much more important. Therefore, if we've been through high levels of stress, whether that's from emotional stress, that could be relationships, financial, these sorts of things. If we see environmental stress, so toxins that come through, left, right and centre here in Norfolk, we've spoken about it before, that the air quality isn't the greatest here in Norfolk. Whether we look at from food as well, pollutants in food, but poor blood sugar management, which we'll go into in future questions. But the more stress we've been through up to the point of going through perimenopause or andropause with guys, that you need your adrenals to be able to function. And that's when it's like a rug being pulled out from underneath you, that your adrenals haven't got this ability. They haven't got the nutrients. They aren't being sent the signals from your brain. Your hypothalamus sends a signal elsewhere to send a signal to create the right hormones. And that's when we start to see how important hormones will be throughout perimenopause and postmenopause.
So the whole flight and fly thing then, is that the cortisol and that what you're talking about, having that effect and not losing weight, and us ladies having the bit around the side and the bit about around the back and stuff as well? So
we test cortisol, and we can test it throughout the day. And you can do so many different things with cycle mapping if you've still got some level of a cycle, to see where estrogen and progesterone is and cortisol is throughout your cycle. But what we have to recognise is, if we do test cortisol, first off, you go to the doctors and test cortisol that's in your blood. That's not as reactive from the adrenals as testing saliva. Right. So it's not the most, it's there and then on that point, that one marker. When we look at cortisol, people demonize it a lot. So we shouldn't have high cortisol. Well, when we wake up, we should have a thing called a cortisol awakening response. So when you first wake up, the light hits your eyes, you send a signal to your brain to say, look, I need to release cortisol. That's why we should wake up. So we wake up, we release cortisol, and we should feel awake. That's over about an hour. Then starts coming down for the rest of the day. And a lot of people don't get this awakening response. And this is anywhere through our lives, but it's so more important to have this awakening response later on in our lives.
So is that from a point of view of waking up the same time every morning, try and get the light in as well, the outside the vitamin D and stuff? Are these all things that we should be trying to do?
I think probably the most important thing for hormones, for health, for just feeling good is waking and sleeping within the same hour window at the same time.
Okay.
If we're waking up at 6 during the week and then 7, 8, 9 during the weekend, we're essentially going to be jet lagging. We're going to miss church if we're waking up at 9 or 10, but we're going to be jet lagged throughout the actual through those 2 days. And that cortisol awakening response, your body gets used to rhythms. It gets used to routines. It knows 5, 6 o'clock, whatever time it is, I need to kick cortisol up. So it kicks the cortisol up. It knows at 9, 10, 11 o'clock I go to bed. So cortisol needs to be lower and a sleep hormone called melatonin needs to be higher. Right. So all these things work in rhythms. There's similar things with regards to eating your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner at very similar times. There are going to be times that you can't do it. There are going to be times that you're up a little bit later. There are going to be times that you just cannot stick to this routine. Life happens, right? But 80% of the time, if you're able to stick to some kind of a routine, your body knows when it's releasing digestive enzymes. It knows when it's releasing stress hormones. It knows when your adrenals are going to be working better, and it can start to function better as well.
And that's the set for, I mean, is that across the board for all of us, or will they be different in menopausal age, or how does that sort of work? Is that?
Yeah, so if you look at, let's talk about hot flushes, for example.
Yeah.
So work with a lot of people with hot flushes where it's estrogen is lower, and there's a kick up in estrogen, and that's what causes the hot flush. And it's these ups and downs that happens. Every time it happens, there's a hot flush. So you look at the Western medicine model of giving HRT, which basically just keeps estrogen high, which can be detrimental in itself. When we look at, is it linked to a cancer? We look at osteoporosis and all these sorts of things. And probably shouldn't go down that route with regards to that side of things, because have to look into the studies with regards to that. But if we can, the further down the line you get, your hormones have these receptors. So if we imagine a cell being this round thing, there's little receptors on the cell, and your endocrine system, your hormone system, has to send these hormones to get to those receptors. The older we get, the less those receptors work. They just get worn out. The more toxins they get, the less they're going to work. And also toxins as well, we'll go into what toxins we can look at, but toxins are going to change the way hormones work depending on the person. So for you, they might make your estrogen work more. For someone else, they might make it work less. For someone else, they might not make much difference at all. And it's the same as endocrine disrupting chemicals, like you have your BPAs. People talk about plastics all the time, but they go to these endocrine receptors and they just disrupt whether we get more or less of a signal. And it becomes more and more important to be aware of the toxins we get exposed to as we get older. And we're never going to get completely toxic free or toxin free. I think that's definitely something to realize, is that if we're trying to be in a world with no toxins, it's not going to happen. We look at what we drink with regard to BPA free. Well, actually, that's a thing called bisphenol A, which is a big endocrine disrupting chemical. But there's also BPAF, BPBs, BPS that are actually shown to be more endocrine disrupting. So just because we've got metals, or we have this isn't a BPA-free bottle, but we have bottles that are BPA-free, there's still plastics in there, which could be an issue. Right. But trying to filter your water, trying to, if you're with coffee cups and stuff, taking the lids off before you drink them, doing the best you can. Just being aware, I think, is helpful. When you're microwaving foods, is microwaving good or bad? Well, we live in a world where microwaving is pretty much the norm, and I'd rather have a tastier meal which I can eat better. But not microwaving in plastic. And if you've got any things like, is it good to have packet rice? Well, it's going to be better to have loads of processed food, but take that rice out of the packet before we microwave it. Like, these little things add up. And talking about, this is a post that was on Instagram a couple of days ago that I put out talking about multivitamins.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of people like put some negative comments, and it threw me a little bit, saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be putting out this false information." It was basically saying that there's a type of B12 that is derived from cyanide, and it's cyanide-cobalamin. It's in a lot of lower quality multivitamins, and it is toxic to the body. Are you going to get a toxic level from a daily multivitamin? Not really.
No.
You're going to have a lot, but you're not really going to get the benefits if you need that B12 and your body can't absorb it. Now, one multivitamin one day isn't necessarily going to be an issue, but one multivitamin every day of the week with your Starbucks on the way, then like there's going to be more chemicals like coming through, the pollutants in the air, diesel fumes, the perfumes that are on there, the moisturizers and stuff. Like,
water.
If we can not have this cyanide-cobalamin, like, that's a bonus, especially if we're deficient in B12 and we can't absorb that. We can first off save our money from that, get a better form, whether it's methylcobalamin or hydroxycobalamin, a better quality multivitamin, to actually notice the difference. And one way you can see, a lot of vitamins, you have to go online to their information thing online and to look to see what the actual ingredients are. It will say vitamin B12 as cyanide-cobalamin, but you can just stop taking it. Do you notice a difference? If you feel better, like one of my close friends, she felt better not taking it. It was having a negative effect. She switched to a different type, and it wasn't that she felt, well, she felt better not taking it, but she felt even better taking this other form. And all it was just trying a different vitamin.
So is there any that you would really say is going to be beneficial for us during the menopause? Is there any really that you would,
I think,
vitamin-wise?
I still feel like,
Omegas.
okay, I should have got the microphones. That's what Serena's literally just said. Sorry. I need to shout more. Laura did say so as well. So with vitamins, that we usually see iron being lower, more when women are still going through periods, are still menstruating women.
I had with you this week.
With regards to having heavy periods, and then it's usually spoken about premenstrual syndrome, but there's also post-menstrual syndrome, where after having a period, there's more signs of depletion and things like that. But really getting the right fatty acids in, the right omega-3s and 6s and 9s, which a lot of people look for, and these are fatty acids. A lot of people have been told that fats are bad. And there's the 4 Fs of gallbladder dysfunction. Bear with me on this one, because it's not all as it seems with 4 Fs. Like, female, 40, fat, fiber. It's not saying fats, it's like had low fat and not had loads of diet. Females over 40, there's signs of gallbladder issues. And because, like, I remember in the 90s and 2000s, it was all about low fat this, low fat that. And even speaking to someone yesterday, and one of my corporate clients, he's been following the Slimming World side of things, and we added up like 3 sins from a Mars bar was 600 or something calories, but he was allowed to have as many bananas as he wanted through the day. And bizarre. Just that whole thing. And it was the fact that Mars bars had fats in there. So I feel that a lot of people, and especially women, both premenopause, going through cycles, and then postmenopause, need to get the right fatty acid balance. And it's called prostaglandin balance. And we need inflammatory fats, because without the inflammatory fats, we don't get the full benefit from anti-inflammatory fats. So what a lot of people do is they just have your fish, they'll have your avocados and stuff, but then they'll shy away from a lot of the more demonized animal meats, and they just get this massive, like, we need a balance there. Rather than having just all pushed towards one side, to really get the beneficial impact of prostaglandin balances. And this is a big thing. If anyone suffers from heavy periods or heavy cramping, or getting prostaglandin balance will really help. When you can do a blood spot test for fatty acids to see if there's any imbalances, we usually find that omega-3s are spoken a lot about, but then actually getting, there's things called CLAs, conjugated linoleic acid, ALAs, borage oil, even in primrose oil. These things are really going to help. Yeah, they're the things that are going to help. So getting that balance, like rather than just getting your salmon in once a week, but actually getting a variation of fats.
So like the flax seeds, chia seeds, all the avocados, olive oil, olives.
Yeah, and also switching what you're cooking as well.
Yeah.
I know like we're guilty of it, like it's coconut oil or olive oil, using ghee, like bringing avocado or butter, like getting good quality butter. These things really, really help.
So everything that we've been sold, really, the meat is bad for you, the full fat is bad for you. It's really not. They're the things that we need more of.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If someone comes to me and they've got high cholesterol and they're eating red meat or high bad cholesterol, I'll check their actual levels of cholesterol, good cholesterol being HDL, bad cholesterol being LDL. If they're high on both of them and high on triglycerides and they're eating red meat every single day, I'm going to cut it down a bit. If they're having coconut oil with every single meal, I'm going to cut it down a bit. But when we look at cholesterol levels, the bad cholesterol, the LDL, and triglyceride levels as well, which is like a marker of the fatty acids within your bloods, it's usually linked with a stressful lifestyle and inflammation within the body. And the problem, not just with estrogen coming down, going through menopause, is the fact that the female body becomes more inflammatory going through menopause as well. So you could be doing absolutely amazing, all the right things, but you've had toxin exposure, there's no symptoms, estrogen starts going down, but your body becomes more inflammatory and you start reacting to foods that you've never reacted to before. And this is where it becomes so hard when we don't track foods that much. And tracking foods got a bad rep because it's talked about for calories and everything like that. But if we're tracking foods and we can see what we're eating, we can see how we feel.
Oh, thank you.
You're on the microphone.
Thank you, Pam.
Are they on? They're on.
Hello.
Everyone can hear us now.
Oh no, love it.
We have got the first bit recorded if anyone does want that, and it should be coming through these microphones. So where was I? So the body becoming more inflammatory. Yeah.
So what causes that? Just all the toxins
with
over
the hormone
time?
imbalance. But remember we said about adrenals.
Yeah.
And how your adrenal function becomes so important, because if say up to 30% of your estrogen is produced from your adrenals, and we're not getting that 70% elsewhere, you should still have enough to be able to function, because your body's not going to need as much. But if the adrenals are deficient, and we talk about adrenal deficiency or adrenal dysfunction, it's not really a certain thing. It's that it's not getting the signals from your brain, and it's not getting told what to do. Like when I do something wrong, Laura hasn't told me to do the right thing.
Good girl.
Always someone to blame. It's called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, so HPA axis we talk about. And it's very important to look into that side of things. So one way of testing it, as I said, is to do a cortisol test through the day. Now, it is only that day. So if you have a cortisol test, and it's a saliva cortisol test where we take it upon waking, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, I think it's like 4 hours after waking, and then afternoon and before bed, it will tell you where your cortisol levels are on that day. And that's very beneficial to see if people have no awakening response, so they're quite tired. Are they wired in the evening and their cortisol levels go up? Or are they just completely flat? And that's like what we would class as adrenal fatigue, but it's usually because they're not getting the right signals to kick their adrenals into gear.
So would that be, because I said to you yesterday, I felt at Saturday I was so chronically fatigued. I could hardly move. I couldn't get off the sofa, and I could have gone easily to bed. But the last few weeks before that, my diet has been awful. like not missing meals and stuff.
Yeah.
So I wondered whether that was that had caused that to obviously just hit my wall, or was it a viral thing that was happening? Do you know what I mean? I just felt exhausted. Never known anything like it. Honestly, it was hard to blink.
Well, if we take into account body becoming more inflammatory, diet is going to become much more critical, because a lot of inflammation can come from the wrong diet and poor blood glucose management.
Right.
So if you then have days upon day, you may have gotten away with one day, maybe 2 days, but if you have like a week of poor food, then your body is going to feel bad.
Right.
And one of the problems that I see is that a lot of the times people think they feel at 100%, they think they feel good. And then you actually get them to eat a bit better. You get them to sleep a bit better. And I see it a lot of the times, like I've got an Oura ring here, my Garmin, like you can see a thing called HRV, heart rate variability, which is a marker of stress on the body.
That, yeah.
And it's the variation between heartbeats. And we want it to be regularly above 60, which is a good place of where it is at. And like, if people have been through trauma, there's usually a little bit lower HRV.
Right.
And like with myself, with going through some different trauma growing up, mine is usually around 60, maybe 70, 75 is high for me. I've got clients that are like 110, 120. And I'm thinking,
wow,
why is this not working for me? But when you look at like the studies with trauma.
Yeah.
But when people are eating bad, they may go to sleep at the same time, they may be hydrated, but then have food that gives them poor blood glucose management, low protein, processed food. Their HRV will just plummet. And I've seen people that have got their HRV. Recently, someone surprised me, and his HRV was like 7, 8, and 9, and I couldn't sugarcoat it at all. I couldn't literally. I said that we need to do something about it. It was worrying to me. I had a client who suffered from epilepsy, and we worked together for about 5 years. It was amazing to see her journey coming off of. She went from 6 medications to 2. She stopped having daily migraines. It was amazing, but her HRV was usually 17, 18, 19. If she was going to have a seizure, we could tell it was around 12, 13. Wow. So we knew we needed to put self-love measures back in. Yeah. And like having the technology, we've got the technology to see these things. We've got, like, whether we want to wear trackers or not, we've got the technology to see it. You can wear it just overnight and see the difference that these things make. But like, as in you said it yourself, like you feel really, really tired because you've not been giving your body the nutrients it needs. Like if you don't put fuel in your car, you're not going to get very far. And it seems like that's such a age-old, played-out thing of saying, "Oh, you need the right fuel to get far," but it's so true.
Yeah, really
so true.
So, what are your thoughts on HRT then, going to the other extreme?
I'm trying to do this with one hand here. Hang on. So, with HRT, is it needed in some cases? Yes. And again, it's very, very case dependent. Is it prescribed much sooner than I feel necessary? Yes. Because if someone is depleted in iron and they're going through, they're anemic, HRT isn't going to do that much. And people are going to take it, see some results because they've just got some sex hormones going in there, they feel better and then suddenly drop off. So we then have to look at what is causing that anemia. Now, is it from previously having heavy periods? People being prescribed HRT and even things like contraceptive pill, if we're going backwards with regards to heavy periods. Yeah. Looking into nutrition is so important, so important. There are cases where people have such extreme levels of anemia that have been anemic for years, depleted levels of ferritin, which is stored iron. They then have the inability to get proteins together. There's a thing called transferrin saturate, which takes that iron around the body. And there's deficiencies in liver function, like all these things where if you give some HRT whilst working on those underlying things that are going on, you can then eventually pull back. But I don't feel it's the answer straight away. However, I have had a client, I think it was last year, the year before, I'm getting my years blurred into one. She was really struggling with loads of things. She was in California, and so we got her to see an actual HRT doctor. She could not lose weight. She had HRT, and over the next year dropped 70 pounds. But could we have done things differently when we look at her adrenal function? Yes. But also, she didn't want to stop training as much. She was in, I think it was like the Forbes 300 list of top businesses.
Right.
But she was really high
Stressful,
performing businesswoman, like really super successful. So could she take the time away to get her adrenals working? And so we made that choice, and she's feeling really good. So I don't feel HRT should be demonized as much as it is. And if we look at, there's a study from the Women's Health Institute, I believe it is, which is around 20 years old, that says that having estrogen and progesterone can cause cancer and be detrimental. And you actually look at this study on, and again, it's been a while since I read this study, so I apologize if I get some of the details a little bit wrong, but I believe it was around 1,000 women or 1,000 cases, and they said, is having HRT going to cause more breast cancer? And they looked, and I think there was one extra case per 1,000, and they actually realized there were less deaths.
Wow.
So it increased by one case in 1,000, but there were less deaths, so it was more protective against breast cancer. So it is on a case-by-case basis. I feel there's so much people can do rather than just getting prescribed the hormones. When we look at your red blood cell count, you look at the oxygen within your blood, you look at the anemia, iron, you look at liver function, you look at gut health, because and again, we have to go through a process called detoxification, biotransformation, whatever we want to call it, where we have hormones that are used, and then they have to be synthesized within the body and then cleared out so that new hormones can be produced. And part of doing this is a thing called, uses a thing called beta-glucuronidation or glucuronidase in the gut. If you haven't got good gut health, you can't, that's going to then reabsorb those hormones.
Yeah.
If we've got too much beta-glucuronidase in the gut, it's going to reabsorb those hormones. And if that happens, we're not then going to get fresh hormones being produced by the adrenals, by the ovaries, wherever it is, to then replace those.
So how do we make our gut better?
We make sure we've got good levels of fiber and variation, diversity. We talk about diversifying the gut a lot. And there's a lot of talk about probiotics. Well, before that, we have a thing called prebiotics, which make the actual bacteria. And then we have postbiotics, which are the things that the bacteria creates. And there's short chain fatty acids, something called butyrate, which if we just get loads of different vegetables, one thing I do with clients is a veggie mash. I need to get a better name for that. But a veggie mash. It's getting around 20, 25 different veg, blitz them in a blender, raw, and then put them in ice cube trays. And then once or twice a day, having an ice cube or a tablespoon. Some people that I've worked with have just had it in water. Ooh. Don't just have it in water, It's not the nicest thing. But I have mine if I have a protein shake and blitz it in the protein shake. And it just, if we look at the veg we have, I eat quite healthy, as hopefully you'd imagine. But I eat quite healthy, but we have broccoli, cauliflower, maybe some mange too, sweet peas, carrots, parsnips. I don't know, there's about 7 or 8 veg, and they get rotated week in, week out. Unless we make a conscious effort to be like, oh, I have no idea what that veg is, let's try it. Or you go to different supermarkets, like foreign food supermarkets, and you just pick up things you've got no idea what they are. And there's not much diversity in it. And then we get into the habit of always having chicken or always having beef or cod or salmon, whatever it is. It's similar meals all the time. And even when you look at dieting, people say, I don't want to eat the same thing all the time. People eat the same thing all the time anyway. You look
True.
at food diaries of people, they have their fish and chips on a Friday or
Fishy
your
Friday.
chili on a Thursday, whatever it is. Like, they have the same meals over and over. There may be 10 different meals. They have the same lunches and the same breakfast.
Yeah.
But when you tell people to eat the same thing, they want variation.
Yeah.
So we need to get diversity in our diet with trying different veggies. There's a PDF that I've got, and just like a 30 veg challenge. Like, try and get 30 different veg in per week. But one way of doing it is not eating the whole veg, is to have those bits of veg. You can put them in ice cube trays or just in bags, so the freezer bags. Again, it's plastic. You're not going to get away from it. You could freeze it in glass trays if you wanted, but you then get a lump and it's impossible to break it off. Obviously, not speaking from experience of just freezing a lump of veg. But that is going to help you just plant those seeds so that your gut can work. And again, you look at the gut health. And we were talking a little bit about ADHD and myself being autistic and suffering from ADHD. I've looked into gut health and how this helps as well. There's a bacteria called Akkermansia, which is shown to be lower in people with ADHD. So if we can increase our short-chain fatty acids, things called polyphenols, from getting diversity in there, we can help ourselves. I know that myself, if I've eaten rubbish and maybe it's like I've eaten some chocolate or something, and I like to go out if I eat chocolate, what's the point of having a little bit? The next day I'm not going to feel good. But it's not just that I feel bloated, it's that my moods are up and down. I go up into the room and I'm wondering where my phone is, and I'm actually holding it in my hand. And they're the things that happen that makes it worse.
Yeah.
Just with poor blood glucose management. Sleep is really bad. And then what happens when sleep is bad? I'm tired the next day.
Yeah.
So this is all stemming from gut health. And I think that we can do so much stuff. And the original question was being from HRT. There's so much stuff we can do before HRT. So much stuff, like myself, I have to be on HRT myself because I screwed my hormones up when I competed in bodybuilding. I've said that loads of times.
Yeah.
And I tried everything beforehand, to not have to use them, to be at the normal levels. And I would say to people, do every single thing you can. One of the reasons I know so much stuff about this is because, yes, I tried it. I've tried it with clients all over the world. And there are so many other options. Tick all those boxes and then look down that option.
So a couple of things with the gut health. Would you go for the pre and the pro? Or would you bring in more the kefir and the raw milk and that sort of stuff, or a bit of both?
It's hard to say unless you actually see on the person and look at their symptoms of where you would start and looking at their diet.
Right.
If someone comes to me and they're having chips and beans 3 times a night, 3 times a night, 3 times a week, 3 times a night, probably wouldn't be coming to me then. But if they're doing that and having alcohol all the time and their diet is really bad and there's things they can improve, I'm not going to start them on probiotics. I'm going to simply start them by increasing their fiber. Right. If they're not having, going to the toilet at least once a day as well, what can we do to improve their diet? If someone's trying all these things, again, you can test for nutrient deficiencies, you can test stool tests, GI maps, you can test all these things to see exactly what bacteria needs to be boosted and what could be lowered and so on. But again, it depends on the individual and looking at it by a case-by-case basis rather than a blanket statement, everyone needs this probiotic. Because you could get a blend of probiotics and they don't need this probiotic to be higher, this certain bacteria, and we boost it, it could do some damage. Right. And again, switching your probiotics as well. I know one of the things, I was working with a company who sponsored my podcast and they were selling a greens drink and it was great. And then I'm still friends with the owner, I still use that drink, but I realized I was just using that greens drink. Right, and if I'm using that exact greens drink, they have a probiotic as well, that exact probiotic all the time, we need some variation, we need some diversity in there.
So a bit of mix of everything.
Mixing it up, yeah. You're not going to get all your veg from a greens drink.
No.
You're not going to get all your greens from the veg, really.
What are your thoughts as well then on the protein? Because everything seems to be extra protein now. Do we need that? Or is that just another selling point?
I think in foods, it's a selling point, but we do need it.
Right.
So that's, you look at actual high protein foods, and I'm doing a free 3-day challenge, and one of the things that I'll tell you about it at the end, that one of the things we're going to look at is some of the actual foods and how much protein is in there. I believe legally you have to have 7% protein to call it a high protein food. So 7 grams per 100. It's either 7 or 9, which is not really that high.
Not that high, is it?
Especially when you could then, in theory, have 90% sugar and still call it, like, you wouldn't, but like,
No.
in theory, if you only need to have 7 to 9% protein. So looking into things, and you have the cereal bars that say high protein, like high protein naked bars or whatever they are, they're not necessarily going to be the high protein side of things. But we do need high levels of protein from good sources and varying sources as well. So getting protein shakes are very beneficial. It's not just going to make you put on weight, it's going to help your body recover. Your body needs protein to recover cells for good cellular function. We spoke about the receptor sites. Your body needs protein to help repair damage to certain receptor sites. Your body needs protein to help repair the cells from a thing called free radical damage to the toxins and the free radicals, the things it gets exposed to. Your body needs protein to repair the damage from creating energy. So if we don't get protein, we don't get good bodily function. And also, protein helps you manage your blood glucose better. If you have proteins and fats with a meal that has carbohydrates, we talk about glycemic index. You've probably heard of the GI index, which is the rate that glucose sugar will absorb into the blood and spike your blood sugar levels.
Yeah.
So white rice being quite high. But if you have white rice, like, anyone here have bowls of white rice on its own? There's always one now. Okay. Well, like, I was about to say no one ever has white rice on their own, but we've got 2 people in here, so cheers. But you don't usually have a...
Dave Asprey told me that, so...
I'm not going to comment on Dave Asprey. How much coconut oil are you putting in your... Cool. But you don't usually have... Here he is. Here's John.
We're talking female hormones, John. Come on in.
You don't have much white rice literally on its own. You'll have some meat with it, some sauce, some fats in there. So the actual glycemic index of the white rice being high, actually, it lowers when we then add proteins and fats to the meal. And also when you have things like, you look at the GI index of sugar, white bread is actually higher than sugar. And so we need to look at the composition of our meals rather than the ingredients of foods. So that's where protein comes in. Making sure that we're not having carbohydrate only meals all the time if we've got poor blood glucose management. Or as Serena said, like, carbohydrate meals are good when you're then going to train.
Yeah.
And it depends on the training as well. Really high intensity training and things like that are going to mean you need to have more fuel stores. A lot of the times as well, like, you can get away with a little bit lower carbohydrates. I work with a lot of endurance athletes, and it's weird how it's kind of like coming full circle, where I used to work with professional endurance athletes, Ironman, Olympic athletes, and I've had some doors open with people running marathons and stuff, where I can now add the functional medicine aspect to it. And you look at how we can fuel this side of things. Carbohydrates probably, like, yeah, we need to keep our glycogen stores topped up, but most of the training, like the long, steady training, they don't need to have loads of carbohydrate stores, because they can work their fat stores. If they've got good blood glucose management, they can work their fat stores for fuel. And this is another thing when we look at sleep. It wasn't one of the questions, but it actually came up on Facebook yesterday. Someone was saying, I tried all these things with sleep. And I don't usually comment, and I probably should. If someone's like business coaching, they'll be like, comment on all these things that are on Facebook, you'll get more clients. But there were so many different things there that use Nitol, use this, use that, and I've tried doctor's medication. And I said, have you ever tracked your blood glucose levels through the night? Or even tracking them through the day? And what happens when we wake up during the night is usually a dip in blood glucose. And this happens a lot when people are stressed. More so through perimenopause. Again, there's the estrogen side of things, so looking at receptor function, but nocturnal hypoglycemia, so dips in blood sugar, happens so much. Now, when our glucose drops, we have to fuel the brain with sugar, with glucose, with glycogen. So we have to find a way to get fuel to our brain. Our brain is so functional through the night. And when we wake up during the night, it's usually because that dip of glucose, we need a way to fuel it. What happens when we wake up? Cortisol goes up. Cortisol's prime function is to boost glucose levels. And we do that when we wake up. So what happens when we wake up? Cortisol goes up. What happens then? We end up, maybe we check our phone if it's by the bed, and there's blue light there, which is then going to wake you up even more because it's what we see from the sun. It gives a signal to your brain to wake up. So we're wired. We can't wake up, we can't get back to sleep.
So what do we do about that then? Because I have certain times that I wake up and I'm just laying there for hours.
Yep. So first off, like making sure when you wake up, don't make it easy to go on your phone. I used to, when I used to compete in bodybuilding, my blood glucose management was really bad. And it just wasn't something, I would say I was healthy. But I know my mum would say, my mum's here, she would say, are you healthy doing this? And I would be like, yeah, I'm healthy. I look back and no way was I healthy doing that. Or as Kim pointed out, I had a lovely tan. Yeah, exactly. Forgot I was going with this, blood glucose.
Yeah.
Got sidetracked with tan. Yeah. So getting your protein levels throughout the day to help balance your blood sugar levels throughout the day will help you through the night. So I said to this person yesterday, I said, look, try having a couple of slices of good quality ham before bed, or a teaspoon of good quality nut butter. So peanut butter, almond butter, whatever it is. Be aware of some of the, I don't want to say cheaper brands, but there's a lot of brands that are really sweet and they've got sugar in them. So.
Quick question on peanut butter though. What
Yeah.
about mold content
Yeah.
in peanut butter?
Depends how reactive someone is. So, and again, if someone, so with mold, can we put a note to come back to mold?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if, can you type? Yeah, there's, we'll come back to the mold side of things on there. But, so getting the nut butters, some people have lectin issues as well. So again, it depends on the person, but they'll usually say if they've got some issues with peanut butter, but just giving someone a tip, peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter, hazelnut butter, or some ham. Have that before bed, just a tiny bit, and see if you're usually waking up at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, does that push it to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock? If it does, we're pretty certainly dealing with glucose. So we can then work on your glucose levels throughout the day. You can test it, you can get a Freestyle Libre. I would say just still get a Freestyle Libre 2, which you put on your arm. It's got a very small, tiny, thin needle. Every time I try and use one, I literally work myself up thinking this is gonna hurt, and it's never hurt. It's I don't know what I'm worried about. So you put it on and you think, is it on? Yeah, it's on. And you have it for 2 weeks, and it keeps your glucose levels for around 8 hours or 8 hours. You scan it with your phone as much as you want. That can track throughout the night. You can get ones now, Freestyle Libre 3, which constantly is connected to your phone. They're like £20 more for a 2-week period, so there's not really much point. So testing that can help. We also know as well that we do need glycogen stores. So if people are going lower carb, and again, there's been fats demonized and then there's carbs demonized, then first thing is, do we just need to up our carbohydrates, but have them at the same time as proteins and fats and get good sources of them? So I would look at, how do you feel between meals or after you've eaten? It's such an important question with any client. If I say how do you feel actually after you've eaten a meal?
Sometimes I'm still starving.
Still starving?
If I'm honest.
Do you ever feel tired?
maybe, but more during the day, tired, like
Okay.
3 o'clock,
Okay.
because I haven't eaten yet all day.
So you're eating. So this is the thing. Like, people feel energized after a meal. Then we look that it's usually hypoglycemia. So there's low blood sugar before they've eaten. So now they're energized. Like, great, it's been low, and now I'm energized.
Higher.
And if people feel tired, that's more hyper, which is insulin resistant side of things. So we're dumping a lot of insulin, and your body can't deal with it. Which we see a lot of those tendencies in things like PCOS, which is like one of the most common hormone issues for women. And unfortunately, like, the way it's dealt with is not the best, because it's a lot of undiagnosed cases. A lot of cases are diagnosed as thyroid issues. So, and a lot of people, like, they go and they say, oh, you don't have any, it's polycystic ovary syndrome.
Yeah.
A lot of people know about it. And they say, oh, you don't have any cysts on your ovaries. But those cysts can be so small that people don't actually see, or the doctors don't see them being there with a lot of the scans. But that tissue is so reactive, they're still having issues. So if I have a woman come to me and they've got high testosterone anywhere, I'm immediately looking, is there insulin resistance? Looking at glucose levels, and is there some sort of PCOS there? And it's a very common cause of infertility as well.
Yeah.
So, and usually they're linked with higher body fat levels and so on. So if we can get that body fat down, so there's been cases where women have been told they can't have kids for years, and then we've managed their blood glucose levels and got that body fat levels down, and then been able to have children. So from better hormone balance as well. You can go the other way as well. You can have too low body fat. Like you see people where, again, body fat is part of the endocrine system. It's part of the hormone system. You have too much or too little, it can be detrimental.
So the glucose levels, I know I was testing for a while, and mine were about 6, which I don't know whether that was good or not. But I mean, is that something that we should be thinking about doing, or is that just taking a bit too far? Or
I think
what are your thoughts on
seeing
that?
your fasted glucose levels always gives people an idea. It's very rare that I don't get a client to test, whether it's a Freestyle Libre on your arm or just a manual, prick your finger, do a testing strip, testing for 4 days in a row,
Right.
or ideally 4 days, and maybe one of those days is the weekend, first thing in the morning. And we want it ideally fasted between around 4.2 and 4.9. I see most people in the 5s and 6s.
Yeah.
And that's it. Glucose in the blood, it needs to be taken to storage sites. It needs to be able to be transported into cells to be able to create energy. If it's in the sugar, it's seen as toxic, which is then going to potentially have more inflammatory signaling throughout. And then if we say about the body being more inflammatory, perimenopause and postmenopause, the glucose is going to signal more inflammation throughout that time. So again, it will be frustrating, because when you have blood glucose imbalances, you're going to crave more glucose. When you're more inflammatory, you're going to potentially have more cortisol as well. How do people lower cortisol?
Yeah.
You crave carbohydrates because that lowers cortisol, but then it kicks it up on the other end.
Yeah.
So it's a very vicious circle, very vicious. But I feel glucose levels it's one of the, I don't want to say the answer, because there's some very intricate health problems, but a lot of health problems, if people manage their blood glucose, a lot of health problems would be improved. I'm not going to say cured, but improved. And that's not just physical health, but mental health as well. I know myself, my glucose is all over the show. Autism tendencies, like I don't want to be with loads of people, like I'm not the nicest to be around with Laura, my wife. And yeah, it's not a good thing. And I end up getting anxiety, sleep is really bad. But if I manage my glucose, which 95% of the time is pretty decently managed, it's all good. So I think glucose is one of, if not the biggest thing, along with sleep.
So that also then leads me to exercise and stuff. I know a lot of research that I've done is now high impact is probably a no-no. It's more building muscle and walking, swimming. Do you want to just sort of go over a bit more on on that as well for us.
I think glucose levels are managed better. I know glucose levels are managed better when stress is managed, but also muscle mass. When muscle mass is higher, and you don't have to be looking like a bodybuilder or anything, just having a little bit more muscle mass allows you to balance your glucose better. And you look at morbidity rates, like all-cause mortality, like if someone dies, and they class like all-cause mortality, if someone has a fall after 60, and their rate or their actual all-cause mortality goes up over 300% in that next 12 months.
Wow.
Now, if you look at the stats, it's like if people have been hit by a bus and killed, like they're still included in there. But if someone has a fall after the age of 60, in the next 12 months, the chance of them dying goes up 300%. But why do people have falls? Well, like they can't get up out of the chair. Like all these things, like you look at quad strength, leg strength, that's a sign of longevity. There's a doctor called Peter Attia, and he talks about lifespan and health span. That a lot of people, we talk about, we want to live a long life. Yeah, I want to live a long life, healthy.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just drop off and drop off and drop off. And like my wife and I, Laura's granddad's 101 in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
It's amazing. Like, but he's in a care home and can't get out of bed. So you look at like the muscle wastage he's had, and can't get up out of a chair. So if you fall over, you need to be able to pick yourself up. And you look at like curbsides, when there's drops in curbs, how many times have we just gone to like step off and not realize, and then suddenly like, oh, didn't realize
Twisted ankle.
So many hip fractures happen because of that.
Yeah.
So many people fall over because they can't suddenly catch their own body weight. So if anything, for longevity, muscle strength is very much needed. Yes, there's a vanity aspect for a lot of people if they want it, but muscle strength is, first off, massively needed for longevity, for glucose management and so on. But then we look at cortisol, the stress of working out, of high intense classes. A lot of times, when I used to teach classes, like you'd have back-to-back classes, and then people would be doing these classes because they couldn't get to the weekday, so they'd do 2 or 3 on a Saturday morning. These are intense classes, and there's some women that I work with that are like, I don't feel like I've worked out as much when I'm training weights. Like, I want to do some HIIT stuff, and like there is that, you want to see the calorie burn on your watches and stuff, and like we can see that, we can feel we've worked out. We don't feel as knackered after the weight training, but it's stressful. And again, it depends on the person how much stress we can put on it. But a lot of the times, I said about body fat levels, probably the hardest thing for me is if a woman comes to me saying they're not having periods, and you look at their diet, they're not having little, if any, animal meat, so probably vegan. They're doing 5 or 6 runs each week, and they've got minimal body fat. Now, the doctors will look HRT for that person. Some doctors, I don't want a blanket statement, all doctors, but most doctors will look at HRT for that person. But if we can actually get her to eat more, what do you like eating? Like Ben & Jerry's, great. Have some Ben & Jerry's in this case, because that's going to help you with your body fat levels. And other ice creams are available.
Not as nice though.
It's getting those body fat levels up, and that's we need to get those fat balances. We need to get body fat there. We need to lower the stress. When someone's exercising, some people can't sleep. They need to exercise late because they need to burn off stress. They need to burn off catecholamines to be able to wind down. But a lot of people, if you're exercising, when most people can exercise, when I used to work in the corporate world, it was 6, 7 o'clock at night.
Nighttime.
But then you can't wind down because 4 or 5 hours before bed, your normal bedtime, again, needing to have that regular bedtime, your sleep hormone melatonin will start to be boosted. When we exercise, cortisol rises. If cortisol is high, melatonin will be low. So it starts boosting, we exercise, and suddenly it comes down again. So it takes another 5 hours to get that back to the highest amount. So it's not to say that you should not be doing high intensity interval training or cardio and stuff like that, because there are still cardiovascular benefits. But if you want, one way of looking at it is if you can't, not that you wouldn't do the same thing tomorrow, But if you exercise and don't feel recovered, for a lot of people that's too intense.
Right.
So you wouldn't necessarily go and train chest all the time, or legs all the time, 5 days in a row. But you should be able to be recovered enough if you had to push it. Like, we're looking at other health aspects as well.
Yeah.
So the same with, like, if you do a HIIT class, you should be able to do the next one the next day and feel recovered by looking at resting heart rate variability, your sleep metrics, and so on, which is in a lot more depth than a lot of people will want to go into, but that's how we would look at it in clinic.
Good. Right. I'm really conscious. We've already done our hour, but I've got one question here. I know we've got a couple of men in the room, and that is, how can we sort of ask our partners, and you obviously being a male too, how can we sort of get our partners to not be sympathetic, or just how they can support us while we go through the menopause? Is there something that we, what are your thoughts on that?
I think not even just menopause, but when still cycling.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's been beneficial. Laura can tell you whether it is or isn't, is being aware of when the cycle is, but aware that it's not just in your head. No. It is actually something going on that sometimes, like, you say something and don't actually mean it. We look at things, so we're going through our own journey with regards to fertility, and I said about having the hormone replacement. I had to come off for a long while, and it was essentially like going from normal testosterone, normal estrogen to nothing, and that was over like 12 weeks of that coming down. And I said, this is what I can only imagine like menopause would be like, with having good estrogen levels, and estrogen being very important in men as well, to having zero. My brain function just dropped off. Wow. I could deal with probably an hour and a half a day's worth of work, and like, this is stuff like I obsessed about learning this stuff too much, as Laura will tell me, of like I just want to learn more and more stuff, but I wouldn't be able to do that at that time. So I feel, first off, being aware, if your partner is still cycling, to be aware of when that cycle is. Know that the week before, which is when progesterone would be highest, being able to like give them more space, being able to, if that's when they've got a massage, like get them to do that massage then, get them to have more meditation time, like try and be aware. I'm speaking from personal, try and be aware of the stress that I put on your partner as well, where like you see things and you do it around the house. I'm working on that one, so I'm a work in progress with that. So I can see these like have words later. But just try not to add that extra stress. And if we know where your partner is on the cycle, and you know that the week of your period, and then in between, like when it comes to ovulation, like that's when they can maybe push a little bit harder. Like you look at conversations, you look like in ovulation phase of better business decisions and like more brain function. But then the week before actually like day one of cycle, when the period comes, when progesterone is highest, like that's that time when we need to step up. And it is about being in that relationship, that communication. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like my communication isn't great. Like with autism, I'm thinking, right, I've said that how it is, and then Laura's of ADHD, and she said it how it is, and we've both got completely different versions of the same story. So this is something we're working on to improve our communication, but I think as well, and when it is like, I've not been through menopause or had a partner go through menopause yet, but I would believe that it is about knowing what they're going through, try and do the work to learn more. Realize that if we like, not, I don't know if anyone doesn't come to church here, we opened it up to people that don't come to church, but we look at God created men and women to be equal with different roles. Yeah. We need to step up in our roles to support you in your roles as well. And there'll be times when you support us in the roles. Like it is about fulfilling them roles. And I feel that if we can communicate, we're just overall going to have better relationships, not just through menopause.
Wonderful, great. Well, I think should we just open it up? If there's, Kim was the first
If anyone
hand.
does need to leave, like,
Yeah, just
not
feel
offended or
free if you
anything.
need to, but
What are your thoughts on collagen and bone broth?
So this is something which has been told to be this wonder food, and I
my
think,
slow cooker's on as we speak.
well, you think it would be, but it depends on the individual. Yeah. So their food intolerance tests, most of the food intolerance tests aren't really that great, but they usually test raw food. Now, if we look at proteins in food, they change when being cooked. So there's a food intolerance test in Array 10 by Cyrex Labs. It's not the cheapest thing to do. It's like $500, $600 to do. So it's very rare that I would do it. But I've had collagen come up on people's tests. I've done a video talking about broccoli, talking about salmon, like the things that are seen as healthy, they've come up on people's tests. So again, when you look at the science, you look at the literature, collagen is an amazing thing. More people are going to benefit from collagen than have a negative effect. But if you are having gut issues, and it started when you look at what did I add in? This is why when people go on a protocol or anything, you see a lot of times in functional medicine, there's a protocol for everything. Add these 20 supplements, but you want to add them in slowly, because if you add in 20 supplements and have a negative reaction, which one is it? So if you are going to improve your protein content, add in collagen and add magnesium and add all these things in and have a negative reaction, what is it? So I feel that collagen is a beneficial thing. It's good for skin health as well, and elasticity on skin. Other things that people have been seen to use, and this is another thing to be aware of when we look at moisturizers, you look at cosmetics, is that there's a lot of skin, this is a different topic, I've gone on a tangent, but there's a lot of skin creams that have estrogen in there. And if you start putting estrogen on your skin, you'll have much more skin elasticity, great. But then you might have high levels of estrogen in your body over time. So at first it feels great. And then suddenly you wonder why you're getting symptoms of high estrogen. So just be aware of what you're putting on your skin. I use Tropics have got some pretty decent skin stuff and cosmetics. I use Green People, these things
Castor oil. Castor oil.
Yeah,
Castor oil.
And do you know what it's called? Palma de Cristo.
It is.
Palm of Christ.
Yeah.
But also, your skin is a reflection of what's going on inside your body, right?
Yeah.
So if we need to improve our skin health, then we need to improve our gut health. And your skin has its own microbiome as well. We talk about gut microbiome. There's so many other microbiomes, and your skin has one as well. So being exposed to these bacteria, is that going to help with elasticity and so on? So it's something, short answer, shouldn't be a bad thing. For some people it can, yeah. Yeah, it's still good. Unless you put it in and then forget about it for about 4 or 5 days like we usually do. And your skin, your chicken's ready for next week's roast.
To absorb it, doesn't it? It pulls it out. Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you get chicken feet, that's the
My
best.
son told me that.
Honestly,
We've not dabbled in the
these-
chicken feet yet.
Serena has. Pam.
I've got a question at the end, even though what I'm going to say before relates to I'm 6 years pregnant.
Do you want? Let me have.
I'll just say that again, sorry. I'm 6 years post having a period, basically post-menopause, and something that I remember when I was going through it, and I just wanted to share, because I think it's important looking at the ages of people going through it, was you were talking about estrogen levels up and down. But I remember when you're having a period, you can feel you're getting irritable, and you know you're getting irritable, and you feel snappy, and that's the estrogen. When I was going through premenopause or perimenopause, I could go from, I didn't just constantly feel irritable before, I would be absolutely fine, happy, and then just and go. Then I'd be fine again. Then I'd be up, then I'd be angry, then I'd be tearful. And I thought I was going nuts. And I remember going to the doctor and saying, I feel like I've got a mental health issue and everything else. And he said something to me then, which isn't mentioned often, is he said it's when you're going through your periods, normal periods, it's your estrogen levels. when you're going through menopause, your estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone are all going at different rates at different times. And just to encourage you, if you're feeling like that, that could also be that. So it's also good to know, but it's difficult. You don't have regular periods when you're going through menopause. So you actually can't follow it. It just happens, it goes. One, how do we manage that? Or I sort of threw it, I ended up getting divorced. And then but my question as well is post-menopause, and what I'm going through now, they talk about foggy brain. I mean, I worked with your mum for many years in the hospital, and when I saw her, I said, hello, Carol, because my brain remembered the C and the L, but she's actually Cheryl. And it seems like that, and I'm thinking, can I do anything about that, or is it just part of having post-menopause? I know you were sort of saying with, you know, like where do we start to improve it? I know obviously check your diet, there are different things that can do it, you know, and health and everything else. But I've been living with the thing, and I sort of feel like, oh, you're on that path of there, and once you get there, you can't recover. So that's my question is, what can we do when we get to that point? I want to encourage others, if you feel that, you know, you're not going mad. And secondly, you know, how do we get from this stage, post-menopause, where you feel like you just can't remember?
Great question.
It's, when we look at the Western medicine model of healthcare, it's based on, you look at your joints, you go to, like, is it rheumatology, you look at nephrology, you look at neurology, you look at all these different areas of specialities. But your body doesn't work like that. And where do these things start from? Pretty much in the brain. And cold hands and feet, well, that tells me that someone's got nutrient delivery issues to the brain, because if they can't get blood flow to their hands and feet, or good nutrient-rich blood, they're going to get poor blood flow to the brain, so brain fog comes in. I think it's important to know what we said about the adrenal function. So when we look at like your hormones being all over the place, like going through perimenopause, the better adrenal function can help manage that a little bit. It's never going to negate it completely, but it can help manage it. Cholesterol levels is a big one, because what people don't look at is cholesterol is a precursor for a thing called pregnenolone, which helps to create estrogen and testosterone. So if people have low levels of good cholesterol, good HDL cholesterol from good food sources, they will struggle to have the raw materials to create that. But along the way, there is something, pregnenolone is also a precursor for cortisol. So if someone needs so much more cortisol, that could take the raw materials, and people have said it is or isn't true, the thing called a pregnenolone steal, but it can take the raw materials that is going to be producing that estrogen and testosterone to produce cortisol. So again, adrenal function to manage that. But I feel brain function is one of the most underestimated aspects of health as well. Because glucose management impacts your brain function. You look at Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, you can see signs of them 15, 20 years before they actually are diagnosed. What are they now labeling these as? Type 3 diabetes.
Yeah.
So if there's poor blood glucose management, there's usually going to be poor brain function as well. We also have things called glia cells in our brain, which are immune cells of the brain. And the more stress we go through, the more these glia cells get primed. And basically they start clearing out dead neurons and basically clearing out too much waste. And what happens when we go through a severe amount of stress, they then get activated. They're primed and activated, and they can't be switched off. And there are some studies to show that longer fasts of like 3-4 days can create autophagy to actually shrink them, but more studies need to be done on that. But what happens then is that if you go through a stress state, there's a much more severe reaction. Post-menopause, glia cells have been shown to be much, much more active. So those self-love aspects become so much more needed. A thing called Yoga Nidra, non-sleep deep rest, powerful. It's a type of meditation. If you search for Yoga Nidra on YouTube, we use someone called Ali Boothroyd, I think her name is. She's got loads of playlists. You just literally lay there and it talks you through meditation, and it allows you to relax and switch off. So the more we can do to help our brain function, and we look at neuroplasticity with learning things, the more using your brain. Like we said about Laura's granddad, he's still doing crosswords, and up until we took, is it a clarinet he's got? I think it's a clarinet. He still plays his clarinet, not very well. He gets a few notes off and hasn't got the lung function to do it now, but he's still able to do that. And they comment in the care home he's at that he's still doing crosswords. Doesn't like the word searches because you can't see him as much, but his brain's still working. And the more we can test it, like using it as a muscle is going to help with that neuroplasticity. So learning new stuff always going to help. Does that answer it a bit more?
Sophie.
You mentioned a bit about fasting.
Yep.
And it related to what you're saying about trying to have those routines in like eating at the same times. What's your thoughts on can you fasting but medical reasons, not spiritual reasons, but can it disrupt that? Can it cause stress? Or do you think it's beneficial?
If someone's got poor blood glucose management, I wouldn't start with fasting. So again, I would ask, how does that food make you feel? So Paula, start having breakfast.
Yes.
But
I do normally.
there's a massive thing about fasting nowadays, and it can be really, really beneficial. And like we've done the fast as churches, like for long fast and so on, and people see some big benefits. But the first side of things I always look at is have they got half decent glucose management first. So if someone eats and they feel energized, as I've said, we want you to get to the point where food should not change how we feel. It should simply give us fuel. It shouldn't energize us, it shouldn't make us feel tired. We should be eating before we feel we need to eat, and then like have a snack in the afternoon and evening and so on. But working up to a point of fasting can be really beneficial. It's time consuming to eat a lot of the times, like when people are having breakfast and so on. If people feel sick though when they eat, which I find a lot of times more with women than guys, is that they say they can't have breakfast because they feel nauseous. That's usually linked with your vagus nerve, which is a nerve from your brainstem into your gut and other organs as well, and that sends signals to and from the organs to your brain. Now, it was once thought of that it was 50-50 with the signals going down and up. But it's actually more signals from your gut to your brain. 90% of the signals go to your brain than the other way. So we need to work on vagal tone. So making sure you're singing your heart out when you're in church. Maybe not in the car when someone next to you if you can't sing like me. Gargling,
Gagging.
working on gag reflex,
Gagging.
all these things. They really help on that vagal tone.
Yeah, tongue scrape.
And there are other eye movements and stuff. If you just search vagal tone exercises or vagus nerve exercises on YouTube, there'll be so many different exercises that will help you with resetting your vagus nerve, and that can help as well.
Can I say something about us ladies fasting as well?
Yeah, you've done really well with your fasting, haven't you?
I haven't fasted for a while, but women cannot fast like men. Men can fast daily
Yeah.
for a whole month. Women, my understanding, there's an amazing book called Fast Like a Girl.
Yeah, that's
I can't
great.
remember
She's
who-
Lady
Mindy
Emeritus,
Peltz.
yes.
So when the first day of our period is when we can really hit it hard fasting. You'd think it might be the other way, but you can hit it hard for about 10 days. Then we have a small window, and I can't remember how many days it is, where we shouldn't fast at all.
Probably before.
And then
week
we have
before.
another little window where we can really hit it again. It's about 4 or 5 days. But that whole week before we're actually due to get our periods, we're supposed to really nurture ourselves,
Yeah,
be kind to ourselves, eat nice, healthy stuff.
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's like the first 12 days is you can fast. There's also one for menopause as well with Mindy Peltz, really good information. Again, it's working yourself up to that, but yeah, like cycling your fasting. The same with training as well, like not smashing the training the week before that week of your period. And again, it's going to depend on how heavy your periods are, and like if you've got dysmenorrhea and cramping, then it's not. I would work on not fasting those first couple of days, but then going into the fasts. But going through, like, I think it's like day 12, and then through ovulation, like not fasting as much, and then like there's 2 or 3 days after that where you can, but 7-8 days before day 1, like that's the high progesterone, so low cortisol phase.
And you want to build up to it. I began fasting I'd miss breakfast, and then I'd have lunch, then I'd have dinner. And I did that for a while, and then I would miss breakfast, miss lunch, and have just a good, healthy main meal. No processed food, all real food, as they call it.
Yeah.
That's grown or has a heartbeat, really. And then I actually managed a 72-hour food fast. I was up there, man. I felt amazing.
Yeah.
Felt really good.
I think
So good.
what's important to note with fasting is why are we doing it?
Yeah.
If we're doing it for weight loss, are we doing it specifically for a calorie deficit? And are we putting more stress on our body because a calorie deficit is stressful as well? So if you eat in too much a calorie deficit, we're just not giving our body the fuel it needs. And so many conversations I've had with people is like, we need to increase our calorie amounts. So having a small deficit is great. Doing the longer fasts, like I done a 72-hour one, like we spoke about this, like we both had some great, like things came from, we felt good. It wasn't until like the last couple of hours of the 72 hours that I didn't feel that bad. And that was more because I thought I was gonna feel bad. So one, I felt bad, and two, I didn't plan any calls. So I was just sitting there clock watching. But the first couple of days, I was absolutely fine.
It's also looking at what you're going to put into your body
After.
to end the fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was eating sauerkraut.
Get your bone broth in there.
Bone broth.
No, I didn't, but I had pumpkin
Eggs.
seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of things you can do before that. Like even with Mindy Pelt's stuff, like if you've got really bad glucose management, fasting will help. But if you've got a foundation of stuff there, like I do love her stuff. Fast Like a Girl, as you say, that I think there's one, like over 40s one.
There's menopause reset.
Yeah, Menopause Reset, that's the one. Yeah. So I've got it at home, I can lend it to you if you want.
In terms of, you mentioned olive oil, obviously, fatty acids intake. I use a bit of rapeseed. Is there any benefits, or what would you recommend?
With rapeseed oil, I try my best not to have rapeseed oil because it's very pro-inflammatory.
Okay.
So if I look at a lot of like foods or anything like I have, if it's got rapeseed oil in, I'll try not to have it. You're never going to get away from it 100%, unless you have like 100% unprocessed food. But using olive oil, I cook far too high temperature, Laura tells me, because I burn the pans. But olive oil, coconut oil, good quality butter, ghee. So all these things are going to be much better. Like vegetable oils and things, they're the things that are going to be really, I said like we need some inflammatory fats, but they're like really high inflammatory and processed fats. So a lot of people will react, and they can flare up a lot of autoimmune conditions as well. So if people have got rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis and things, then you might see some flare-ups from having those sorts of fats in there. All right. Anyone else?
Thoughts on how we can have an overgrowth of yeast in our body? I've often thought maybe I've got a problem with
Candida.
Candida, causing many, many symptoms that could be being confused with
Yeah.
hormones.
Yeah, so signaling of hormones is like a massive issue for a lot of people. Where it's coming from, I said with PCOS, a lot of people are being diagnosed with thyroid. Where does this come from? So yeast overgrowth or candida overgrowth is a really big thing. And testing, like doing a stool test, a GI test. Some people will do breath tests
Spit.
as well. Yeah,
Spit one.
I feel the best one is to do stool
Blood.
tests.
Oh.
They're not the most pleasant to do, but they give you the information of where you've got it, and it is about being strict. If you think about yeast, like we're going to have to look at antimicrobial like sort of supplements to have that. Berberine's good, turmeric's good, your garlics,
I can't think of what the end one
those
is.
sorts of things. But cutting off the fuel.
Oh,
What does
hard
yeast
work.
need? It needs sugar. What you're going to crave most? Sugar. With protein. Yeah.
I've got a book, Mandy. It's Dr. Erica White, because I've got candida really badly, so I have to manage it. And last week I had a real bad I was just on the chocolate last week, and I've got a fungal toe that I've had for 26 years, and I've had really strong medication from the doctors, and that sent me a bit doolally. But that was the only thing that obviously cured it. But my toe last week, from having so much sugar, it was itching like crazy. I'm thinking that's just the sugar, so I've got to cut it out, because it just brings stuff out. It's dreadful.
The hardest one for that is I've had clients whose kids have, like, they go to the toilet and then be itching all day.
Yeah.
And like to try and stop them from having sugar when they're having it at school, they're having it around their friends' houses, like they're in America and playing baseball, like they're having it at all these places. So they're not even in control of their kids' diet as much.
No.
So, but it's a vicious circle. But we need to cut off that fuel. Fasting would be good in this case as well. But again, you need some good blood glucose management, or okay blood glucose management to fast. So it's seeing where it is on a individual basis, but it's very hard because the thing that you're going to crave is the thing you need to stop. And the more you try and stop it, the more you're going to crave it. So that's where breathing techniques, those sorts of things are going to help. Going out for some walks. When you're doing it, fatigue is going to kick in as well. One of the things with things like chronic fatigue, and this is more like when you go down chronic fatigue and ME route, is that the thing people need is the thing people stop: exercise, because they're tired.
I know.
And we need exercise to get good cell health, good mitochondrial function.
Yeah.
So if we stop exercise, we're not going to have good cell health. So it's very much making sure there's movement in there as well. So.
How much does the liver play into everything that goes on in our...
It's big. If you look at detoxification and we look at liver function, it's dictating whether we can utilize supplements that we're taking. It's dictating whether we can get the toxins out. It's dictating whether, some people will say it is or isn't. When we look at toxin release, toxins are stored in fat cells because there's no mitochondrial there to actually do damage. So if we've not got good liver function and detoxification, then there are some studies that show that your body won't release fat as much. And so we won't be able to drop fat as well until we support detoxification. Then we look at weak liver function, the toxins that we had, and then that 1 or 2 glasses of wine a week becomes massively detrimental, like just for liver function. A lot of people associate poor liver function with high levels of drinking, but 1 or 2 units can be detrimental if there's poor liver function. Because not the alcohol, it's the mold, as we said, it's all those things. And it depends, like we said about mold, is that depends if you have been in a mold environment for a long while, the immune cells, the IgG cells, switch to an IgE cell, which is much more severe and reactive. So if you go into a room with mold, you notice it.
I can smell it.
Yeah,
I can smell it.
I was in a room, like we lived in a small house growing up, and there was black mold in there. There's nothing we could do, but was it 2 until 18? So there's nothing we could do about it. And that was obviously through years of growing. So if I go into a room of mold, I see it. I was at an event in Orlando, not last year, the year before, for 2 nights, and I had 8 migraines in the next week. Like, that makes a lot of difference. So toxins and mold, like, we think we can just wipe it over with bleach, but
worse, don't touch it. Don't touch it.
So it's very damaging. And you see a lot of times with people like doing up old houses, and they look good on the walls, but it's saturated inside the actual walls. So it's very, it's a harsh thing. And again, you can test for this stuff, but it's not available on the NHS really, and it's not cheap. So it's, looking at symptoms is a big thing. So.
Do you want to speak on what you sort of maybe can offer the ladies if they want to sort of talk to you a bit more?
Yeah,
after?
so we probably should have said it before. A lot more people left.
But that's fine.
We're doing a free 3-day challenge. It's only going to be like the basics of like looking at the composition of food and some of the things I've gone over in here, but actually putting it into action. So we'll put the sign up page, which is going to be ojayhealth.com, ojayhealth.com/challenge. It'll be on social media, but we're doing it on the 29th of August. Of August? Is my brain not working? April.
April.
Yeah, we're planning in advance. 29th of
You'll need
April.
to do another one in August because this
Yeah,
one will
we
be
will
full.
after summer holidays.
Yeah, that's
We'll do
right.
another one. I'll do these all the time. People will stop coming eventually, but 29th, 30th, it's going to be 6:30 at night, and then we're going to do it 5:30 on the 1st because it's our wedding anniversary, and we want to do something as well. So I got told off because I said 6:30. So yeah, we'll go there and we'll like all be online. And it'll be recorded if you can't make those actual times, where we'll talk about how to get good protein. We'll look at some actual foods to see what protein levels are in there and the composition of the food on your plate, looking at fats. Some of the things we'll have talked about today, but it's actually doing it. So I think that's a big thing. Implementation is great hearing these things, but actually if you've got a task to do the next day, then you go and do that task, and we'll have a group where people can chat about it on Facebook and stuff. And yeah, if you've not got Facebook, we're doing the calls on Zoom. So yeah, you can sign up and go from there.
So obviously, if people can't make that date and they want to speak to you, you're around.
I'm here. I'm working in the coffee shop regularly as well. Drop me a message on social media. I'm Ollie Matthews Health, Ollie with an IE. I have to put my name on my shirt just to remember who I am. Ollie
We all need
Matthews
that.
Health.
We all need that.
Not Oliver.
Only if he's naughty.
Yeah, I know that. If Laura starts calling me Oliver. But yeah, like just drop me a message, come and see me at church, and like happy to chat about it. As I think you can see, I just love chatting about this stuff. So if hopefully people get something from it. If people do want to talk about actual working together, I do one-to-one stuff. So yeah, just come and see me.
Wonderful. It's always a pleasure. I hope you ladies got something and men from that. Thank you,
you.
Ollie. Really appreciate you.